Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the DropMock Podcast. We are so excited for today's episode. We have a very special guest with us, our very first special guest, actually. I'm here today with Chris Reynolds. Chris is the host of the Business Method Podcast. He's a high-performance productivity coach and a location-independent entrepreneur. Guys, welcome, Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Madison. Thank you for the wonderful intro and thank you so much for having me. Let's make a great podcast.
Yes, absolutely. So let's start off. For those of our listeners who don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit more, your backstory behind your bio? Talk to us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. So my name's Chris Reynolds. I've been an entrepreneur for over 10 years now, and 8.5 of those years have been location independent and traveling the world. And I guess it really kind of all started for me when I came across the book, The 4 Hour Workweek.
Mhm.
And I think that's a famous book, especially amongst location independent entrepreneurs. When I read that, I just thought to myself, I'm going to do this. I didn't know how I was going to do it or what I was going to do, where I was going to go or any of that. And so I used that book. I ended up reading it 4 times, and then I bought the audio. At the time, 10 years ago, we had CDs that we put in trucks, put in a CD player, and I listened to it about a dozen times. Because my job, I drove a lot during the time, and so I could pop it in there and drive around and listen to it. And I use that as a study guide. And so I started building websites online, generating some AdSense, some revenue from those websites. And then after probably a year and a half after I read the book and started building stuff online,
Mhm.
I bought a one-way ticket to go to Costa Rica. And I thought, I'm just going to make this happen. I didn't even have that much money. I had like $3,000 in the bank account or something. And I just thought I'm going to make this happen. No matter what happens, we're going to do it.
Mhm.
So while in Costa Rica, I got a house on the beach, which was fairly inexpensive. It was like $450 a month, and it had decent Wi-Fi. And so I continued to build the business and do some contracting work online at the same time. And while I was down there, I thought, it would be cool to do like some sort of giving back project or some sort of charity adventure or something. So I had a friend in the centrals of Costa Rica who was connected to this clinic that helped children with developmental disabilities. And we were like, hey, let's raise a bunch of money and then climb the tallest mountain in Costa Rica and then give the money all to the kids. So
Yeah.
we did that, and that was really fun. And I started blogging about it, and we raised all the money online through social media, through Indiegogo, crowd. Not crowd surfing, crowd funding,
Mhm.
and then after that, my friends were like, "Hey, Chris, we know you're going to Peru next. Why don't we do another project in Peru?" So we found a charity down there, a family that was helping kids with malnourished children. So we raised a bunch of money, and we raised a bunch of money up to homestead land in Peru, and so children at the school could use that land to grow vegetables so they could have lunch every
Wow.
day. And so they use that as a classroom and as, their farm so they could learn how to grow carrots and rice and potatoes and all this.
Mhm.
And so that started off, and over the past 7 years, that expanded from 1,000 meter farm into a 12,000 square meter farm and still running today.
Mhm.
And so so I continued to blog about this and do more charity adventure travels, grow my network.
Mhm.
And so then I did another project in Ghana to build a home for slave children. And so after those three projects, I realized that I wanted to work with entrepreneurs more,
Mhm.
and I had ended up in Barcelona. And so one thing I realized while I was traveling the world, and many people don't know this until they actually leave the U.S. or leave their home country and start to travel, is that it can be very lonely if you don't have like-minded people around you while traveling.
Mhm.
Um, you know, Getting integrated in the culture is a lot of fun. And meeting some local people and hanging out at the beach is a lot of fun. But for me, like I thrive entrepreneurs, other inspiring people. And so I was a bit lonely while I was traveling, even though I was living out my dream.
Mhm.
So I decided to create a business accelerator in Barcelona, where entrepreneurs came and lived in Barcelona, and we built our businesses and worked on our goals together.
Wow, that's
Yeah, so I did that
cool.
in Barcelona for a few years. I did that also in Rio de Janeiro, and I did that in Thailand. So we would move locations throughout the year.
Mhm.
And after a few years, I realized that to build that business and sustain it, it was scalable, but it was a lot of work that I didn't really want to do. And I wanted to be more online and less like at a physical, having less physical events.
Mhm.
And so I took out all the productivity stuff and the goal setting stuff that we were learning in those business accelerators and put it into what we have now today, the business method. So
Wow.
the business method teaches about high performance productivity for entrepreneurs, goal setting, focus, flow states, neuroscience, and all this stuff. So it's really helping entrepreneurs grow. And we're still doing one live event every year down in Thailand, one business accelerator.
Mhm.
But for the most part, everything's online with the podcast and coaching and courses.
Uh-huh. Chris, there are so many things I want to touch on already.
Okay.
So going back to at the beginning, you said you had read a book, The 4 Hour Work Week.
hmm
Were you working like a full-time corporate career type of job?
No, so when I read that book, I had started a business already and then it failed. So I started actually with a network marketing company.
Mhm.
And the first year it did really well. And the second year is when the global recession hit.
Mhm.
And then the company just went flat. And so so the first year and a half, I was doing well. I bought a new car, like I had a nice apartment. I was living in Phoenix, Arizona.
Mhm.
And then the recession hit, and like that company, the company, the products, everything was just like we couldn't sell anything. And so I went broke during that time. And so what I actually did is I went back to Missouri where I grew up, and I helped my friend work on his farm. And then a college friend, I helped him in a landscaping business because I was literally like, we called my bank one time, me and my friend, and I had like 25 cents in my bank. And that was
Wow. Mhm.
and but I still had yeah, I think I had some credit cards that I could use here and there to kind of keep me going.
Mhm.
So I started rebuilding from like ground zero, and then I started reading the 4 Hour Work Week.
Mhm.
And so that's when things started firing in my brain to like, okay, we can build something online while I'm helping my friend on this farm
Mhm.
and while I'm back in the Midwest until, the next place I go.
Mhm. So here's a question. Do you kind of believe that it was a little bit of the universe and manifestation, like bringing that book into your life?
100%. Like, so there's been a few books that have crossed my path. And when I just read the title, I knew that I knew that I knew that I knew that was going to be a book that I needed to read. But
Mhm.
I actually came across a 4 Hour Work Week 2 or 3 years before. And
Wow.
I just like, that's a book that I really want to read, but, I'm not doing it right now because I've got other stuff going on.
Uh-huh.
And so I don't know how life would have been, if it would have been much different if would have read it earlier.
Mhm.
But when I came across it, it was definitely the right time.
Yeah, perfect.
And there's some other books, it's just shocking when a book comes across your plate and it's just like that one's going to be a good one. Another one is You Are the Placebo by Joe Dispenza. And I've known about that for 3, 4, maybe 5 years. But that was one I was like, yeah, I think that would be a really good one. And then I just put it off for whatever reason. And I read it earlier this year and I was like, this is on my top 10. This is, one of the best that I've read for me.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it's funny how that's happened. I think the universe plays with us a little bit and says,
And I'll
hey,
definitely have to check out
yeah,
both of those books because
yeah,
I went to your podcast and you recently interviewed John, and
uh-huh.
you guys were talking about the 4 Hour Work Week. And now I'm like, man, that sounds like a great book.
Yeah. Yeah, and John's a perfect case study for the 4 Hour Work Week because I mean he took the 4 Hour Work Week model, and my business is pretty good, but he took it like, he's making multi million dollars while, practicing flying helicopters. So he's like he's at a really, really high level. So
Yeah, it's so cool. And also how you mentioned you gave yourself no other option. You just
mhm.
went full steam ahead, like, I'm gonna make this work.
Mhm.
So why was that? Like, was there just you wanted this so bad for your life, you decided to go all in and pursue it?
It wasn't that I wanted it so bad that it was just like interviewing. That's what I need to do. So, for example, like I remember when I was in Missouri at the time, and I was with a bunch of friends, and we were all sitting around, and one of the guys asked, like, this was 2009, I think. One of the guys asked, like, where are you going to be in 5 years? And everybody would say, oh, I'm gonna, have a raise at my job and maybe start a family and da 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 da. My answer, and it was completely the most honest and pure and shocking answer for them, was I'm going to live on the island in the South Pacific. And they were like, I like that answer, but nobody, had any answer remotely close to that. And so when I read I think it was, I don't know if I'd read I think maybe I was reading a 4 Hour Work Week, or it was during around that timeline.
Uh-huh.
And I just knew that it was going to happen. And so it wasn't an option. It was just like, this is this is who I am. This is my life. I'm just stepping into that. And I think from like maybe doing personal development work and knowing who I was, and maybe meditating on a regular basis, I just knew that was the next step. And it wasn't, there was no burning desire. It was like, this is just me coming out. This is what I'm doing. And that's
Yeah.
it.
And
Yeah.
two things that are really powerful there. First off is you future casted your life. You were just like, I'm going to live on an island. 90% of people are not future casting their life. They aren't writing down their goals or getting super specific about who they want to be and what they want to accomplish. So I think that's so cool that you were able to just claim what you wanted for your life. That's amazing. But then also what you had mentioned of, sorry, lost my train of thought
That's
there.
okay.
I was going to say something along the lines of you then decided, as things got better, you wanted to start giving back. And so as you were growing and becoming more successful, you wanted to give back to the world. You wanted to contribute. Can you talk a little bit about how those projects are doing today and just how that really touched you and kind of helped you to grow as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the project in Costa Rica, it was basically we're raising a bunch of money to donate to this clinic that helped children with developmental disabilities, and there was a group of nuns that run the clinic. So these children were abandoned, and their parents couldn't raise them or afford to raise them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like, hey, let's raise up money and just donate it to them to help them out so they can buy more medicine. Maybe they wanted to build a swimming pool because it's really good for the children and their muscles. And so that was it. And so as far as I know, actually that was in 2001. Yeah. No, not 2001, 2011. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, it's still running, but I really haven't checked in with. I had to check in to see how they're doing.
Awesome.
Then the second project in Peru. So originally it started out as 1,000 square meters, the farm for the children slash classroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then it expanded over the past 7 years into a 12,000 square meter farm.
Mm-hmm.
And the other families of the children in the area can become a steward of 1,000 square meters. So there's 11 families, and they get the land for free, but 50% of what they grow, they have to donate it back to the school. So you really have like year round these children that were basically eating potatoes and rice for lunch every day. Now they have all these different types of vegetables that the families are getting for themselves, but also giving to the kids. And literally like the after a year after this project, the kids went from being like really sluggish at school, not wanting to learn, sleeping during school, to being the best soccer team in the whole area because they had so much energy and they were excited about learning and all this. So they were getting the
Uh-huh.
vitamins and minerals they needed, right? And so that's still running and doing well today. And then the third one was in a town called Tafi Atomi, Ghana,
Mm-hmm.
and that was to finish the construction of of a home for slave children that were being taken out of slavery in Ghana. And that ran for a few years, and I think it's still running, but it's not, the charity is not as active as they used to be because I think of some political reasons. And the woman that led it had to back off because she was having some stuff back home with her kids she needed to take care of. So
Mm-hmm.
it's still running, but not as active as it was 7 or 8 years ago. So it's doing decent, I think.
There's a book I recently read. It's become one of my favorites. It's called There's No Plan B for Your A Game. It's by Bo Eason. It's all about how to be the best in the
Uh-huh.
world at what you do. And so far, your story really resonates with me regarding that book because you stepped into your potential. You didn't give yourself any other options. You went with your A game. All of these other people, these families, these communities have benefited from you stepping into something that you felt called to pursue. And I know that our listeners right now, maybe they want to start a brand, they want to build a company, they want to start their business, get into an MLM, whatever it is. Just think of the opportunities that not only can happen for you, but for the communities, for other people who can benefit from the work that you step into and start doing. I think that's powerful.
Yeah, I think so. That's a really good point because I think like as a human, the most important legacy that we leave is how we help others
Mhm.
in the world while we're here, right? And so nobody puts on their tombstone, "Oh, I wish I made another $1 million." Everybody says, "Oh, I wish I would have helped people more. I wish I would have spent more time with family. I wish I would have been kinder, more compassionate." And so yeah, it's a cool thing to see, and it's a cool thing to live because you get to be an inspiration for a lot of people and help a lot of people out. So
For sure.
yeah.
You mentioned how the business accelerator. So
Uh-huh.
you were traveling here and there, and then you got pretty lonely. So you decided, hey, I want to make like this network, this community where entrepreneurs, we can all work together, that type of thing remotely. So
Hmm.
talk about why you decided to do that. Like, was it because you guys wanted to network and start connecting? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, after I read the 4 Hour Work Week and I created that lifestyle, it was great. But I would sit on the beach in Costa Rica, or I'd be in the town that I lived in Cusco in Peru, and I would just walk around. And I would, when I lived in Arizona, I had a really good group of like-minded personal development entrepreneurial people.
Mhm.
And so when I was in Costa Rica and when I was in Peru, I missed them a lot. I missed being around, their inspiration. I missed them, helping me become a better person,
Mhm.
and all that. And so I made my way to Barcelona eventually, and through an entrepreneur group, I had a friend, and he was looking for a roommate, and I said, "Hey, we've got a room in this place, come stay." So
Mhm.
this was the very first time that I lived with another entrepreneur,
Mhm.
and he lived with us for a month, and we would work from midnight to 6 a.m. every single night, and
Uh-huh.
we would push each other, and we would set goals together. And so I don't know, his name is Eric. I don't know if he was on Facebook or what he was doing, but just because he was sitting there working, it inspired me to work and do more too.
Uh-huh.
That was really the most productive, focused month of I had in a long time, and
Uh-huh.
especially while traveling, because the productivity levels just like went through the roof.
Do you think
And
it's because you had like that accountability of
yeah,
someone here, someone's watching what I do?
and we were creating goals together, like consciously creating goals together. We would say, hey, work time's up, got to close the computer, now we got to go work out. And so then we would do that, and just having him around, the accountability really helped.
Mhm.
And so I thought to myself, why aren't people, this is even before like co-living even started. Like I was like, why aren't more people doing this? We have all these location independent entrepreneurs around the world, digital nomads. Why aren't we doing this? And so I put it up on some entrepreneurial forums and put it out to my warm network. And I said, hey, let's live in Barcelona for a few months and build business together, set goals together, and enjoy the city. And so 12 people ended up coming. I booked the apartments. I didn't even, this wasn't a business at the time. I just said, let's just do this for fun.
Uh-huh.
And so the people came, and we said, okay, we decided like, how are we going to structure this? Everybody, we discussed it, and we wanted to do weekly masterminds. We wanted to put all our goals up on the refrigerator so everybody knew what everybody was working on.
Yeah.
And we wanted to, have a daily lunch together where we went out and enjoyed the culture and the food. And so through that, at the end of this period, I said to everybody, I was like, hey, I'm thinking about making this into a business. What do you all think? And they're like, yes, overwhelmingly.
Uh-huh.
So then, right after that, just a few days, I actually Well, I had, a few weeks to plan it, but I put up a website. I called it the Entrepreneur House. I said, let's see if more people want to come. I put a price tag on it. Boom, it just started filling up. So for the rest of the summer there in Barcelona, we did the same thing with different people. So that group of people left, we got some new people in, and then I thought, hey, let's do this in Thailand. I know a lot of people in Thailand, so I put it up. 17 people came to that event in Thailand. And afterwards I was like, I always wanted to go to Rio de Janeiro. Let's try it in Rio. So we did it. It worked in Rio, then back to Barcelona, then in Thailand. And so we did it for a while, and it was a really awesome experience, because you can imagine just being around entrepreneurs and people that really inspire you on a day-to-day basis. Everything about your life is a mastermind. You could be making breakfast together and you just have this little problem, like, hey, my funnel isn't working, or my Facebook ads aren't working, and this person could say, oh, just do this, and then it changes everything. Where if you were at home by yourself, you're looking on these forums, or you're searching the internet on how to fix it, or you're reading a book and it's just you and you alone trying to make it happen. So it worked out. It was a great experience and a great business for the time being. But after the 3 years, I was exhausted of living in all the houses every single time, and I was like, I've got to make this more sustainable for myself in the long term. So I just reduced it to one event a year that we do in Thailand now, and then put all the productivity and high performance stuff up online.
That is so cool. And I can just picture in my head how powerful that is, like being in a room with like-minded people who are chasing after dreams, helping to hold you accountable. Because even I work here in Jamie's office, and there are days where, okay, I'll choose to work at my house, but my productivity is like tenfold when I'm here at the office, when I'm working side by side with Jamie, because it's that accountability. You both want to be productive and get stuff done for the day. So to have that consistently, oh my word, that is powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you said you hold one event a year, and it's all about the high performance productivity. Can
Yes.
you give our listeners maybe one or two tips if they're struggling with being productive, staying focused, or accountable with their goals?
Yeah, absolutely. The most important thing, and I think you know this because I watched your video on Facebook, but I think one of actually, a guy asked me recently, what's the thing that most people do? One of the things that most people do to reduce their productivity levels, and I said, well, people just try to do too much. And so, like, the theme for me this year and next year has been do less better, do less better, do less better. And I tell this to my clients over and over, and people I work with, people I talk to on the podcast. Do less better. And the better that we can get, the more discipline that we can get at not taking on more projects and not taking on more things to do, the more restful we become and the better decisions we make, because our minds is more at peace. But it's not easy, especially as entrepreneurs or high achievers or anybody that just wants to get a lot of stuff done. It's not easy at all, because we want to get a lot of stuff done. And if you think about it, like, we have 60,000 thoughts per day, and every day we're picking up one new thought or a few new thoughts of things that we want to do, right? And so it's hard to filter all of that out, very hard sometimes. And so the better we can get, and the more time that we can is to rest our minds, and to get focused and get clear on things, and not bringing more things on the table, the more productive we'll be, and actually we'll get more done by working less hours. And I think that's huge, but it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice for a lot of us, because we're just so good at, like, doing. And but then what happens also is we become really good at those few things that we're doing. And when we become really good at those few things that we're doing, more people come to us. We generate more business because we're the experts in the field. And so yes, that would be, like, overall number one, the most important thing I would say to
And
anybody.
what's very important about that is when people first go into business and entrepreneurship, they think they want to be everything for everyone.
Yeah.
So they're going to do 100 different things in their business. And the reason people tell you to niche down and really find your ideal client is because you'll be able to serve that person a whole lot better when you do less better, when you are the expert. You are the ideal person for that ideal client. So
Yeah.
that's definitely something to keep in mind. But also, Brendan Burchard, he talks about this of every hour you're supposed to take about a 10-minute break before you go back to work. And this was something he'd mentioned in a YouTube video. And so it was like you work for
Hmm.
55 minutes, you get up for 10 minutes. And it's like this reset for your mind and body before you go back to work. And when I started to implement this, oh my word, it made a huge difference because you come back after you've
Hmm.
had a sip of water, you walked around for a few minutes, then you come back to the work that you were doing and you do it a whole lot better because your mind is
Yes.
ready to go again.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we do that at our events. We do that, and we have people work all day long, and we have a timer up on the television screen, and they have a 50-minute countdown until they have the next break. And then
Uh-huh.
we go outside, and we do some stretching, talk a little bit, and then have a buzzer go off. It's time to start again for the next 50 minutes. Yeah.
Exactly. That's awesome. Well, Chris, I want to go on ahead and talk about your podcast, the Business
Yes.
Method Podcast. Can you talk about why you started getting into podcasting? Was it because you wanted to connect with other entrepreneurs? Kind of how did that get started?
Really, it was, I was hanging out with all these entrepreneurs. We were doing the Entrepreneur House. And the first thing was actually, I wanted testimonials, a good platform for testimonials, because we were having a lot of success from the Business Accelerator, the events we were doing.
Mhm.
And so then after, 30 or so episodes we got out, I also realized that the conversations that we were having at lunch or dinner and just hanging out were so powerful. And I thought, like, we need to record this more. There needs to be, more of this recorded so we can put it out there to the world and people can hear it and learn from it and it can help them out. So that's where I started. And I was like, well, okay, how can I start this off with a big bang while using these high performance productivity methods all together, blended in and make it really something that's inspiring.
Yeah.
So I decided I wanted to interview 100 entrepreneurs in 100 days with $100,000 businesses or higher. And so I did it. And so it was early 2017 when I did it. And it was a lot of work, but it was easier than I thought, especially getting the people on the microphone. That was much easier than I thought.
Mhm.
So then after those 100 episodes, I thought to myself, like, let's keep doing this. Let's roll with it. So I decided to do 100 episodes with seven-figure location independent entrepreneurs. And actually that's when I think I met, our mutual friend Lee,
Uh-huh.
and he came on the podcast and we had those episodes, which was really cool.
Mhm.
And so now we're doing 100 episodes of major influencers. So we're getting these really these big names or major influencers that are handling influence responsibly, but have had a significant amount of success, and they're helping share with the world how they can be successful as well. So that's where we're at now.
Yeah, that is so cool. And I've been listening to several of the episodes, and oh my word, it's amazing. Like, it is now, I'm following it. It has become one of my favorite podcasts. You have
Thank you.
over 400 episodes. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Over 400. Do you have any specific favorites or just people who really stood out to you? It was a super powerful interview and conversation.
Yeah, I have a lot. We can go on and on and on, but we interviewed recently Laird Hamilton, who's a number one big wave surfer, probably the top name in big wave surfing in the world, and he had been like a hero and inspiration for me for like 15 years, and so I was really excited to get him on the mic,
Oh,
and then Stephen Kotler, who's a flow state expert and founder. Author of a bunch of like books on high performance and flow state. That was a really good one too. I chased him down for 9 months, and finally he said yes and came on the show. Another one was Jim Rogers, who's a really successful business investor, and I'd known about him for a long time, years and years, and I was so flattered to get him on the show. And yeah, there's just so many people. Like sometimes somebody will come on the show. Amanda Francis is a good example, and she just was so like inspiring, and just really shocked how much value she had. And another one, I think we're mutual friends with, Tiffany Julie. Do you know her?
yes. Uh-huh.
Yes. So she came on the show, and I met her through a mutual friend, and I was blown away by her story. And such an inspiring, woman traveling the world. She went blind while she was traveling. Now she's getting her eyesight back, and that was really a really fun episode, an inspiring story.
For sure. Well, Chris, since you have, over 400 podcast episodes, you're kind of an expert at this. So anyone who, our listeners, they want to start a podcast, but they aren't sure where to start, or even advice for us as we're continuing to grow the DropMock podcast, what advice would you give to some new podcasters? Like, how do you start, where to start, how to, grow it and get people on the show?
Yes, great question. I would recommend for anybody that's interested in starting podcasting is record 10 episodes beforehand to see how it goes, to see how you
Before
feel.
launching?
Yeah, yeah, to see just to get kind of everything smoothed out, right? And then you'll kind of figure out, if you want to continue with this, because the thing is like there's 800,000 podcasts out there.
Wow.
Only 200,000 of them are active though. So a lot of people think it's a cool idea to start a podcast. They'll get to 10, 20, 30 episodes and they're like, this is too much work, and they'll give up. And so recording 10 episodes beforehand is good because you get kind of your wheels on podcasting, your balance. And then what I recommend to people is, try to find a niche out there that's not like oversaturated. Try to find one that either serves an existing market, an existing network of people, or one where you can grow like a podcast and because even our podcast, like we have a lot of competitors and big names, and so like sometimes that's challenging. Where if you have a hobby, or focused on a specific niche, like say you like wood carving or something like that, you could grow a podcast and grow a network and grow a business much more quickly as you could in a very oversaturated network. So that's a recommendation. And then I also recommend to people like backlogging a bunch of episodes and then publishing day to day, every single day for the first, few months. And that helps with the Apple algorithms to help generate traffic and helps get you higher in the new and noteworthy section and the new business, or the new section of the podcast, whatever genre you're in or category. And then just, have fun conversations with people. That's it. Enjoy yourself. Podcasting is one of the best networking hacks anybody can do. Podcasting is also one of the best education platforms for the podcaster that a lot of people don't talk about. So I've learned so much from these interviews, and it for me it's hard to go into a mastermind or conferences now because I'm getting so many to do things from the people I interview. So I go to a conference and I'm like, yeah, this is good information, but it's not nearly as good as this guy I interviewed or this woman I interviewed a couple of weeks ago. And so that's really cool to see too. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, those are some really good, helpful tips. Thank you for sharing those. And as far as the Business Method podcast goes, where can people find it? What platforms? Do you have a website? I'll also put it in the show notes for all of you listeners, but I want Chris to share where you can find it.
Yeah, so we're on all the platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Castbox, all of them. Google Podcast, and then our website's thebusinessmethod.com. So you guys can go there, and then also it links to all the podcasts as well. And and that's the easiest way to do it.
Awesome. And so to wrap up our conversation, I want to talk about 2020 because we're recording on New Year's Eve.
Yes.
And tomorrow the new year starts. Can you go on ahead and give our listeners some 2020 inspiration? Are you you personally, are you pursuing any big goal in the new year? And how are you keeping yourself accountable? How are you going to accomplish it? And what advice would you give to our listeners?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on social media right now talking about like how you're going to tackle the next decade. What's the roaring 20s going to look like for you? And while There's a lot of people talking about it. There's some valuable insight in that. There's some valuable wisdom. So think about yourself in the next 10 years. What did you do actually over the previous 10 years? And what do you want to accomplish over the next 10 years? And so I was thinking about myself. Like 10 years ago, I was selling on Amazon, and I sold on Amazon for 6 months, and I was like, oh, this crap doesn't work. And then, now it's 2019, and I'm like, oh my God, like if I would have stuck with that, I would have been retired. And so, so there, and YouTube is another thing that I seriously considered back in 2009 as well. And I was like, yeah, just too busy for YouTube thing. And so like there's platforms that 2019 that are the YouTube of 2000, like it was in 2009. And I think podcasting is one, but it doesn't matter. Whatever you decide, think like if you commit to something for the next decade, there's a extremely small chance that you will not be successful as long as you put in the time and the effort, right? And so like say you want to launch let's just say a blog, for example. Year one may not be successful. Year two and year three, you may struggle, right? But if you put it in year 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, you're going to see some really good results. And there's so many people that stop before like year 4, 5, 6, and 7. And there's so many people that I know, I've interviewed them on the podcast, that once they push through that, like literally like 5, 6, and 7, year 5, 6, and 7, they're doing really well. They're selling a business for 7 figures. They're making hundreds of $1,000s per month. They're doing really, really well. And so that's where the curve is. And so when you guys think about like, what do you want to tackle for the next, for the future, think about yourself 10 years from now, and what are the things that you want to do and what do you want to accomplish? And then what I say for the year, especially for business or career goals, only make 2 or 3. And so if you think about yourself at the end of 2020, what are the 2 or 3 things that you could feel really darn good that you accomplished? What are the 2 or 3 things that you look back at yes, I got that done and that was huge. I got this done and it was huge. And I got that thing done and it was huge. And so that's how you focus. That's how you keep your things, your numbers down. That's how you do less better. And now that becomes a habit or a discipline of not taking on more projects, right? But if you can keep that focus, then I think figuring out what you want to do over the next 10 years, and then that will help you find out what's in alignment for the next year, and only making 2 or 3 really solid goals for your business and career. And I think it'll be very refreshing for anybody that implements that strategy.
Great advice. Absolutely. Because consistency is key. When you are pursuing a goal or trying to break a bad habit, you've got to be consistent with it. And what you're saying about having 2 or 3 big goals that you're going after, not 100 different things, because you want to be able to actually find success with the things that you're pursuing. And you can't be successful at everything. So you got to go on ahead and just choose a couple of things that you want to do very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being our special guest on today's podcast episode.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Everyone listening, I hope you found this podcast episode insightful and impactful. Definitely check out the show notes. That way you can listen to the Business Method podcast and stay connected with Chris.